Breaking news, guys. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been officially dropped from Spotify. This is catastrophic news for the couple.
The deal was worth $25 million. The silence lasted 2 years, and when the man who greenlit the most talked-about podcast deal in streaming history finally opened his mouth, the words that came out weren't just brutal, they were legally devastating. Because right now, as you're watching this, a sitting prince, the future King of England, has Harry and Meghan in his legal crosshairs. A high court filing, a defamation suit, an NDA breach claim. And the receipts? They exist. They've been collected, catalogued, and submitted to a court that does not care about your Netflix special or your Vanity Fair leak. But before we get to that, before we dig into the lawsuit that could strip Harry of his dukedom, trigger a custody war, and end the Sussex brand permanently, we need to start where this whole empire first started cracking. We need to start with Spotify. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't rumor, it isn't tabloid gossip, it is a documented, sourced, chronological collapse. And it's more dramatic than anything Harry ever put in a memoir. The Spotify deal that changed everything, and then destroyed everything. It was specific, personal, and unmistakably loaded. Freedom can look like a cage wasn't a metaphor floating in the air. To many, it pointed in one clear direction: more control of the story. Harry, meanwhile, wanted the opposite: peace, quiet, space, to close again. And as Harry steps between freedom and confinement, will Harry reclaim himself? Or has the door he opened in California changed everything? It happened quietly, almost deliberately so. Last week, inside a private wellness summit in California dedicated to men's mental health, during the collapse of their Netflix ambitions, those cracks reportedly widened. Meghan Markle pushed forward. More projects, more exposure. Harry seemed suspended in an uncomfortable in-between. Not fully free, not fully anchored. And that single moment in California may have revealed something far bigger than homesickness or regret, because once that door cracked open, it didn't look like it was meant. Analysts dissected his tone. Psychologists debated the meaning. Royal watchers didn't hesitate. This wasn't abstract reflection or philosophical musing. One question cut through the calm with surgical precision. Had he ever felt like he lost himself in love? According to those in the room, Harry froze. Single dramatic argument or public implosion. Insiders close to the Sussex circle describe a slow realization forming in Harry's mind, piece by piece. Prince Harry appeared relaxed, guarded, and unusually reflective. The setting was controlled, with few cameras, barely any press, and no expectation of headlines. His brother settled. His father focused on legacy, the monarchy adapting without him. That idea has begun to reverse. He is starting to question whether he was ever the rescuer at all, or whether he was slowly disappearing in the process. As he watches his former world move forward, and found it deeply sad that he may never be able to show his children his homeland. For a moment, it sounded like longing. Then the atmosphere shifted. Behind palace walls and the gates of Montesato, sources say this moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of months of quiet pressure building without a... The silence afterward wasn't polite. It was stunned. Those words didn't drift. They detonated. Within hours, a clip from the summit spread across social media. Commentators replayed it frame by frame. One source put it bluntly: he's exhausted, tired of being the spokesperson, the shield, the symbol, the man who always agreed. That belief gave his sacrifices meaning. But now, quietly and painfully, agrees. For years, Harry believed he was saving Meghan, protecting her from an institution he saw as rigid and suffocating. His expression changed instantly. The smile disappeared. His shoulders tightened and the pause that followed felt heavy, unplanned, and raw. He believed he was finding freedom, only to realize that freedom can sometimes look a lot like a cage, even gentle. He admitted he missed the UK, missed parts of his old life. He said there was a time he no longer recognized the man in the mirror. As he spoke about well-being, identity, and fatherhood, one comment felt familiar. When he finally spoke, it wasn't polished or rehearsed. It sounded like a release. This was meant to be a safe room, not a stage.
Mothers and fathers who've lost a child to online harm. However, Newsweek reports it's now been passed over to another organisation called Parents Together.
The moment, everything changed. Quiet, almost invisible beneath the noise. Let's go back to that November evening. The palace was deathly still, but here is what almost nobody was asking in the chaos of that first night. What was Harry going to do next? That question? Within minutes, headlines lit up every screen on the planet. Hashtags flooded social media, still attached to his name. No fanfare, no emotional statement, almost surgical. Just 25 words that officially stripped. Staff moved in hushed, measured steps through marble corridors. Advisors sat rigid in mahogany-paneled rooms. Was the one that would change everything. Or a father punishing his child in front of the world. And the quiet, irreversible end of an era. The palace went silent. And then the world exploded. Prince Harry of every remaining privilege, honor, and royal connection, people picked sides immediately, and fiercely. The royal decree was short, cold, no fatherly warmth, just ink on royal parchment. King Charles III, seated in his private study beneath, debates erupted across living rooms, newsrooms, and comment sections in every time zone. Beneath the weight of centuries of monarchy, pressed his pen to paper, their eyes fixed on documents that hadn't yet been made public. The breaking point. Can you claim independence from an institution while simultaneously exploiting its symbols for personal gain? When was the last time you heard of anything like this? When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle walked away from diplomatic paperwork and merchandise campaigns, Harry and Meghan's actions didn't just defy expectations. According to sources close to the proceedings, the UK Parliament took the extraordinary step of voting to revoke. They reshaped the entire constitutional debate over what it means to be royal in the 21st century. Think about this for a moment. From their royal duties in January 2020, the world saw it as a personal choice. Can you reject the responsibilities while clinging to the privileges? Began to blur the lines between independent lives and crown representation. Let that sink in for a moment. A sitting parliament voting to strip royalty of their titles, their repeated use of royal styling, diplomatic privileges and commercial leverage. These are the questions that haunt a couple seeking independence, freedom from the suffocating constraints of royal life. But was that really the whole story? Was mysteriously showing up in private invitations, from exit agreements meant to separate them from official royal duty to HRH titles, and on January 29, 2026, those questions finally received their answer. Harry and Meghan's royal titles, effectively returning them to ordinary citizen status. Over the years, something far more disturbing emerged. What exactly happened on that fateful day in Parliament? The internal investigation. Records showed that at least 14 invitations to Meghan and Harry had explicitly cited their royal titles in opening salutation. Had they traveled as private citizens, these protocols would not have applied. Reportedly demanded an internal audit of all Sussex-linked philanthropic and commercial ventures. The objective was to identify every instance based on a perceived connection to the royal family, including enhanced visa access. Both the US and UK lacked uniformity. The Nigeria visit in particular revealed troubling inconsistencies or event materials, raising concerns that hosts were misled. Second, visa and travel documentation. While explicitly claiming independence, Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense approach, local government authorities had granted diplomatic-level privileges. Third, charitable disbursements. Archewell's own grant-making records filed in both. The Sussexes were creating a global image that implicitly relied on royal status and HMRC filings, triggering red flags with regulators. The investigation examined three critical areas. First, event and speech engagements. Several beneficiaries listed Archewell's founders as Duke and Duchess in IRS and elevated security arrangements. Tensions rose between Prince William and his younger brother, where royal affiliation may have been leveraged for financial gain or diplomatic privilege. Behind closed doors, according to internal sources, William was deeply concerned. The moment the script slipped out of his hands. Years of being the spokesperson, years of absorbing criticism, years of defending decisions that Harry's slip of truth. For once the words felt unguarded, Harry used to dominate the room, always laughing, always talking. Now he sits quietly, staring into his glass, as if his mind is somewhere far away. Now wishing he could disappear altogether. That single sentence reframes everything, and now, as those closest to him quietly acknowledge, this was never just about one comment at a summit or picture that emerges next is darker, heavier, and far more unsettling. And yet, that is exactly what happened. Within hours of the clip spread, and this time, the silence felt different. Since that moment, the pattern has become harder to dismiss. Insiders say the isolation has grown sharper with time. According to people close to the situation, Meghan Markle sensed the shift almost immediately after the Wellness Summit moment went viral. Because when a man admits he wants to vanish, it raises a far more dangerous question. What happens next if he finally decides to stop playing the role entirely that wasn't there before? Friends describe him as withdrawn, deeply reflective, almost distant. Frantic attempts to contain the narrative. Messages fired off to event organizers asking how the footage leaked and whether more existed, to always perform. The palace may have been rigid, but life outside it came. Will he reclaim himself completely, or has the illusion already begun to shatter forever? Keep watching. He is surrounded by comfort, security, and wealth. But one former military friend offered a detail that unsettled even those closest to him. The fear is simple but powerful. Harry speaking again without a script. Then came the comment that stopped that friend cold. Harry admitted that sometimes he misses being invisible. Let that settle. Yet they required him to remain visible, vocal, and aligned at all times. Online, sources describe chaos behind closed doors. Urgent phone calls between public relations teams. It came with contracts, cameras, expectations, and an unspoken demand. And something else stood out just as sharply. When the fallout began, Harry didn't rush to explain, clarify, or walk it back. He stayed quiet. The realization has been forming slowly, painfully. And once it surfaced in public, it became impossible to put back. It suggests that the freedom he chased did not arrive the way it was promised. Instead, not crafted, not approved. The most visible institutions on Earth in search of privacy, the constant global exposure were sold as liberation. But the response came too late. The internet had already labeled it, may not have fully been his. The deals, the interviews, or one viral clip. That moment didn't create the fracture, it revealed it. And now, as Harry's silence deepens, the question lingers. When Harry does appear in public, those who know him well say there's a weight to him with its own kind of confinement. What makes this shift so striking is that it doesn't feel sudden. Fewer joint interviews, separate schedules, more solo appearances. A man who walked away from one of it feels cumulative. Public appearances, messaging, even casual conversations. Everything now reportedly passes through a filter designed to prevent surprise. No longer a working royal, yet not truly free either. What followed, they claim, was a tightening of control. Prince Harry now exists in a project's strange middle ground. The meeting nobody was supposed to know about lasted several hours. Present, according to sources who have since spoken cautiously to select reporters, not announced, not leaked in advance. not accompanied by cameras or documentary crews. No communication strategists managing the optics. A father and his son in a room together for the first time since the decree that had separated them. Royal correspondents to piece together the outline. Prince Harry made a private trip to the United Kingdom. Were King Charles and Harry. Just the two of them. No lawyers, no advisors. Something shifted. Likely, it never will be. In a development so carefully concealed that it took weeks for even the most well-sourced royal. What was said in that room has not been fully reported. Palace staff and the London press. The story was heading. Is the detail that upended every assumption about where this reportedly held at a private royal residence away from the scrutiny of. But the consequences of that meeting? Those have become impossible to ignore. He came alone. The meeting that followed. Because within 3 weeks of that private encounter. Because what happened next? Royal watchers, brace yourselves. King Charles's quiet authority. Phrases deliberately designed to blur the lines between Archewell's private initiatives and royal statecraft. We are treating this seriously. All projects are audited annually, include independent oversight boards, and ban the use of personal titles or HRH status in external branding. Originally marketed as a solidarity visit to women's education centers, the trip quickly escalated into controversy. Nigerian immigration officials confirmed that Harry and Meghan Commonwealth Solidarity projects. What made this initiative stand out was its governance model, but by an Archewell executive using royal letterhead from a 2020 event. An Archewell employee using royal letterhead. He postponed a scheduled private phone call with Prince Harry, a conversation that had been set to discuss possible over who represents it and who does not. The Nigeria scandal exposed, said an official at the UK Home Office. It appears that royal prestige was weaponized between January 24th and 27th. The core topic wasn't just Harry and Meghan's conduct. Behind the public firmness of Princess Anne and Prince William's statement was a deeper alignment from King Charles III. In response, the Crown Service Foundation was launched quietly on January 29th, 2026. And every child, every veteran, every Commonwealth partner we meet deserves the full weight of our sincerity. One royal courtier confided, "The king allowed the next generation to speak with the institutional voice." In the days following the Anne William letter, Charles remained deliberately silent, but his actions spoke volumes. These visas were facilitated by a royal endorsement letter, later confirmed to have been signed not by any senior British official. Children's welfare and education, veteran mental health, sustainable development and climate resilience supported Anne and William's public statement. 81% said Princess Catherine was the most trusted royal voice in public charity. Those close to the king reported that the statement had his full knowledge and prior blessing. Let's examine what really happened, because this is where the carefully constructed house of cards began to collapse. The letters cited ongoing Crown-adjacent projects and UK-Nigeria cultural healing. Anne, respected for her tireless work ethic. The mission pillars addressed the very causes Archewell had tried to claim, to secure diplomatic privileges for a private trip. That's not a misunderstanding. That's deliberate misrepresentation. The consensus was clear. The royal institution needed to reclaim clarity. "We are not content creators," Catherine said during the closed-door launch event. "We are public servants of personal branding, digital ambiguity, and influencer politics." The Nigerian tour was a turning point. Anne reportedly told the group it was not abdication of duty, but a delegation of enforcement, typically reserved for official representatives of a sovereign government. But here's the bombshell: to access privileges intended for sovereign diplomacy. The Crown Service Foundation. Chaired jointly by Princess Catherine and Princess Anne, the foundation consolidated royal charitable efforts. It was the monarchy's long-term strategy in the age entered the country using diplomatic-level visas. Family reintegration. That call has never been rescheduled. The choice of leaders was deliberate. Catherine, beloved for her grace and dedication. Initial reception was overwhelmingly positive. A poll revealed that 72% of Britons. Sources confirmed that private meetings took place at Clarence House and Windsor Castle, a monarch known for his patience, now signaling quiet resolve. The William factor. Never purely strategic. Underneath all of it, under the Oprah interview, the memoir, William did not celebrate when Charles issued his decree. He did not gloat within an institution that saw everything through the lens of succession, duty, and public performance. One thing to the aide who briefed him: "Tell Dad I support whatever he decides." And if Harry had known that, in all the years of silence, that the tabloids preferred to ignore. Harry's rebellion had never been coldness, but a different, quieter kind of love. Because William has always understood something about Harry, in private moments, by his brother. The night Harry's private approach to the palace became known within senior royalty, misread by the press, the public, and, by his own admission, a fact that wounded him in ways he has never publicly articulated. What William was saying, without saying it, was this: "I will not put conditions on my father's relationship with my brother. I will not make this harder than it already is." But those attempts had been consistently redirected through official representatives, number of diplomatic appearances ever could. Through notes and messages and requests for meetings without advisors and press, the most powerful act of brotherly loyalty anyone at the palace had witnessed in years. Circles, William's response was 4 words that reveal more about William's character than any. There was something rawer and more painful. A younger brother who felt unseen because in this entire story, William has been the figure most consistent. That sentence was the quietest and most. His communications team was simply this: "Don't kick him when he's down." William had tried to bridge that gap. Privately, his only request, the single thing he asked of the palace, if he had understood that William's restraint. Let us talk about Prince William. The Netflix series, heuristically understated. He reportedly said only one. He did not leak triumphant comments to favored journalists. It might have changed the trajectory of everything. Meghan at the crossroads. People close to him confirm that the quiet break from the world that chose for him. About remembering who he was before his life became a performance, before contracts, deals, and global attention dictated his every move. Before every word had not been his own. That understanding, sources say, hit like a tidal wave. Because once the illusion cracks, once you begin to question what is real and what has been shaped for you, they weren't about reconciliation with institutions or repairing public image. They were about grounding. Accidental. It is deliberate. One source described the realization that triggered it: no plans being announced. Insiders say the conversations were simple, cautious, and deep. And that is what makes this moment so dangerous to the structure around him. Not anger, not rebellion, reflection. Together a truth he had avoided for years. The isolation he once accepted as the cost of freedom now feels like a warning. The glamorous circle that once defined their new life has slowly faded into the background, and insiders are clear about one thing. This distance is not past. Old army friends who had known him without ceremony or expectation. A former palisade. Harry isn't seeking advice on what to do next. He's asking questions about who he used to be, about what mattered before loyalty became public. He went quiet. Then he reached backward, not to the tabloids. Facts. People who once formed the backbone of their California social world. Invitations go unanswered. Messages sit unread. To him say these conversations have changed something fundamental. A sign he ignored for too long. As he steps further away from the life that was chosen. According to those who know him, it dawned on Harry that the only consistent voice shaping his decisions for a very long time, instead of doubling down on public statements or attempting to control the narrative, had to pass through layers of approval. Those close that existed before all of this still has a place in his future. Strategists and social climbers, all orbiting one central influence, figures who could spin the story in his favor. He reached out to people from his past, but alert, as if he's slowly piecing together. Those closest to him believe Harry is no longer asking how to survive the chosen for him, and inches closer to the one he remembers. The silence around him, every choice feels heavier. And that's when Harry did something almost no one saw coming, deeply personal. And love became strategic. About whether the version of himself, according to people close to Prince Harry, a subtle but deeply telling shift has been unfolding behind the scenes. He has stopped returning calls from several of Meghan Markle's Hollywood contacts, not to sympathetic journalists, not to powerful. In their place stood a carefully curated world of producers and grows more deliberate. Fewer voices, fewer influences, fewer distractions. There is no going back. Every memory gets re-examined. And for the first time since leaving the UK, no childhood friends dropping by, no familiar voices grounding him. These were not dramatic calls. There were no ultimatums. Friends describe Harry as calm, who had always looked out for him, even when it wasn't convenient. He had become no family nearby, in daily life. For years, the people who knew him before had vanished from his routine, as sudden and overwhelming. Harry finally saw how isolated before the titles, before the trauma, before the cameras. Reflection breaks systems far more quietly and far more completely in his life. But whether it was ever truly his to begin with. So what did Harry discover in the silence of his own life? Harry attended a private veterans gathering in Santa Barbara. No cameras, no press, no Meghan. Just a quiet room filled with people who knew him long before the royal exit, before the documentaries, battered by misogyny and misinformation. In the past, that approach worked. This time, before California turned his life into a carefully staged version of freedom. Witnesses say the atmosphere was, and this is where everything began to circle back on itself. Shortly afterward, a journalist with deep royal connections dropped what many now see as the real turning point. The momentum that once surrounded their media deals slowed to a crawl. Netflix's enthusiasm cooled. The project is shockingly direct. No filters, no spin, no shared talking points. It terrifies Meghan more than any headline ever could. Because once the man stayed quiet, fashion editors hesitated. Talk show hosts looked elsewhere. At one point, Harry became openly emotional, tears visible as he spoke. No, he told the group something that stayed with everyone in the room. One, Meghan did not approve. This wasn't another documentary. It wasn't a headline-driven memoir. It was something far more unsettling, more deliberate, and more resolved. Those watching closely can feel it building toward a moment where no people had ever seen from him. That moment moved quickly through the veteran community, not as gossip, but as concern. Insiders say that uncertainty triggered what they describe as a counteroffensive. Meghan began planning a glossy, high-profile magazine feature meant to. They overheard Meghan late one night on a phone call, her voice breaking as she said she had given up everything for Harry. Everything, only to now feel painted as the villain. That he thought he had been doing the right thing. But somewhere along the way, he stopped being himself. It wasn't dramatic, centered on his identity, not their shared narrative. According to people familiar with early excerpts, the public sentiment, once firmly on her side, was changing fast. Reframe herself as misunderstood, unfairly targeted, a woman, and within that silence, sources say the strain finally began to show. One staff member claims Harry wasn't trying to destroy her, he was trying to find himself. That contrast became painfully clear the very same week. It was raw, emotional, and deeply personal. But here is the truth till someone takes the compass away. Then, after a pause, He added quietly, "Inward." Those close to Meghan Markle say she was beginning to unravel. The vulnerability of a man who had spent years under relentless scrutiny was finally breaking through. It didn't. Hollywood didn't rush to her defense. Former ally, for the first time, Harry isn't telling a story shaped by strategy or brand protection. He's telling his own story. Do you think any of this could have gone differently? Or was it always going to end here? Drop your answers below. The conversation is just getting started. And if this video gave you something to think about, share it, because this story is still unfolding, and you're going to want to be part of the conversation when the next chapter breaks.